In this video, I'm gonna... Oh, sorry. So I appear to have sneezed myself into a new dimension. Still no door though, so I'm basically stuck here. Did you know that Christopher Nolan hasn't destroyed one, nor two, but 3 IMAX cameras? That's a $500,000 IMAX camera. That's $1.5 million worth of damage. I mean, sure, Christopher Nolan and the studio he's working with can afford to write that off, but I would hate to be that camera operator. The first one he damaged while shooting The Dark Knight in that tunnel under Gotham chase sequence, because the camera got too close to the action.
I don't like IMAX cameras.
Back then, IMAX cameras were so expensive that nobody even bought them. Not even studios and movies with budgets of like $200 million. They just hired them from IMAX. When Nolan totaled this camera, IMAX only had 4 of them at all. Like 4 in the world all over. They only had 4 cameras. The second one was totaled on the set of The Dark Knight Rises when the Batpod skates through a crowd and accidentally whips the camera out of the camera operator's hands. The third one happened when Nolan, now in full Wile E. Coyote camera killing mode, secured an IMAX camera to a plane and then crashed that plane into the sea. The plan here was upon the plane hitting the water, nearby divers were going to paddle over and pick up the camera while it was still floating. It didn't float, it sunk. It took the divers over an hour to find the camera, but hey ho, the footage survived. And that is filmmaking, folks. I guess neither you or I have the budget to go around breaking expensive camera gear that's worth even 1% the cost of those cameras. Making films on a very small budget means that even one breakage can ruin your day or even put your project on ice until you've saved up enough money to buy that new lens or get that camera fixed. And so looking after your equipment and keeping it protected can often be the difference between life and death of your movie. That is, not literally. So here's some tips, which is also a list of all the stupid ways I've ended up breaking equipment over the years that'll hopefully stop you from doing the same. Quick disclaimer, some of the following tips might appear to be rather obvious, but if you stick around to the end, I'll explain why it's not always the obviousness of what you should do that leaves you holding a bag full of broken, expensive camera parts. Tip 1, always keep your camera attached to you at all times. Anytime I've broken a camera, it's because I didn't have that camera on my person. I once left my camera on a table, stupidly sitting there, and the strap was hanging off of the table, and I knew I should have moved it, but I didn't. I went away and did something else, and someone walked past, they caught the camera strap, and the camera was dragged off the table and smashed on the floor. I was fortunate though, because the body, albeit a little bit scuffed, was okay. The lens, however, which took the real impact, was ruined. If you can't control the camera from where you are, as in it's not securely attached to you, then it's vulnerable to any kind of chaos that might happen the minute you turn your back on it. If you can assume that that will always be the case, that anytime you leave it alone, somebody will destroy it, then you'll never let it out of your grasp. Use the camera strap or one of those strappy rucksack clippy things. The rucksack clippy things. You know the thing I mean. I don't currently have one. I still think that like $60 or something like that they go for is quite a lot of money for what is basically a glorified rucksack strap. But everyone who's got one seems to rave about them, so if you do have the money to spend on one, it's probably worth it. If you don't though, your camera strap is good enough. Make sure your strap is secured around your neck, or do as I do, which is to wrap it around my wrist whilst I'm using the camera. That way, if it does slip out of my hand, it's not going anywhere that's going to cause it any great damage. Tip 2, always keep your camera in a camera bag or a camera case when you're going to and from film shoots. Don't throw it into a regular rucksack, the kind of place you leave books, your lunch, drinks. Sooner or later, you're going to end up with a camera that's filled with crumbs in places where it's really difficult to get them out. Or even worse, you'll get a liquid spillage all over the camera, and that will probably be the end of that camera. This tip does come from the voice of experience. I did stick my camera in a rucksack with those things and ended up spending hours trying to fudge all the little crumbs out of the grooves in the lens and also between the buttons, like the capture release button. It's not great. But on top of this, if you do take an expensive camera like that and just chuck it in a regular rucksack, then you offer up the chance for that piece of equipment to fly around in that bag, no matter if it's on your back or you place it on the floor, someone accidentally comes along and trips over your back. Back when I was starting out, and yeah, I used all my money on the camera and then thought, well, I'll just use a regular rucksack. My camera did end up getting a whole bunch of scuff marks on it because even though I might, I don't know, wrap it in a jumper inside that bag, there's always a risk that it's just going to fall out because none of these things are securing your camera at all. If you can get yourself even a super cheap camera bag on Amazon, one that has a brightly coloured inside to it, not only do you offer up secure protection for your camera, but you also make it super easy for you to organise and find all that equipment once you open the bag. Tip 3, when possible, always change your lens in a dust, dirt or sand-free environment. Now I know that's not always possible on the go, but you can imagine how easy it is for something small yet very damaging to get into your camera this way. And whatever you do, don't change your lens at the beach. That's like baiting the god of small and jagged rocks to come along and tear up your camera sensor. Now, it's quite a rare thing to have to clean your camera sensor, but I had my very first film camera for 1 whole week before I had to clean mine. Yep, I left the lens off and the body open with no cap on it for a stupid amount of time and let a whole lot of grubby dust in. I was lucky the camera and the sensor were all fine, but that's a really dumb way to potentially damage maybe the most expensive thing you own. Changing lenses indoors is far better than changing them outdoors. If you are outdoors, perhaps you have your car nearby and you can change your lenses there. Find somewhere indoors that you can sit down to do that job, like a coffee shop. Some place where you won't be halfway through changing that lens when a random gust of wind comes along and blows dust all over the inside of your camera. If you do suspect there's something inside your camera or on your sensor, then the best thing you can do is get one of those squeezy air pumpy things and hold the camera upside down and just start pumping air onto it like so. Not sure why I'm still doing this. And please don't blow on it either. You'll end up with spit, vapour, probably particles of breakfast all on the inside of your camera. It's not a good look. Tip 4, remember to use your lens caps. This one obviously wins prize for the most obvious of tips. They wouldn't be selling lenses with lens caps unless they intended for you to use them. But if you're running around from one shoot to another, they can have a tendency to get lost. Certainly in my case they do. So it's good to have a few spares in your camera bag case at any given time. The most important thing to remember here is that your lenses are way more valuable than your camera body. You might upgrade your camera body every couple of years when new tech arrives and a new fancy brand spanking model comes out. But your lenses, well, they hold their value mostly, and therefore it's much more important that you treat them with a bit more care. If you throw one into your camera bag or even have it attached around your neck to your camera without a lens cap on, you are tempting fate to get one big nasty scratch across that glass. I have fortunately never scratched a camera lens, touch wood. However, this is because I learned on practically day one of filmmaking school how to use ND filters on my lenses. And this isn't for the reason that most people would buy an ND filter for their lens, and that is to reduce the light coming into the camera a bit like a pair of sunglasses would, but because even inexpensive ND filters, ones that cost like $20 on Amazon, will take a very cheap piece of glass and screw it on top of your very expensive lens, keeping it entirely scratch-free. Well worth it. Now, one day I was filming up some concrete steps and I slipped or I tripped and I fell lens first onto those steps. The ND filter on my camera didn't even scratch. It did dent though, but what I'm thankful for is that it was the ND filter that dented and not the lens itself, which would have been a difference between, again, $20 and maybe $100, $200, maybe even $300 worth of lens. Tip 5, the most important tip. Do not let time pressures stop you from protecting your camera gear correctly. Every time I've stepped on a mic and broken it, or lost a battery, or dropped a camera, or scuffed a lens, or even dented an ND filter, it was always because I was rushing around with my mind on the next shoot, the next scene already. Remember, when it comes to your gear, when it comes to the tools that you have available to make your movies possible, always try and remain present in the moment that you're setting it up or packing it away. And that should hopefully save you from any low budget heartbreak. Now, check out this video here, as it's going to show you how to take all that low budget gear you've got and turn it into something really cinematic. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching, filmmaker.
I don't like IMAX cameras.